Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about prototype process. This is the lesson 5 of human centered design. So prototype, we need to create a prototype so that we can find out the feedback from users, whether they like it or not, whether they are able to easily use it or not, or what other improvements we need to make in our final product. And before making those big disaster, big problems, big loss, it's better to create a prototype so that we can get feedback, and based on that we can make changes and finalize the product and minimize the loss, the major loss that could have taken place if we just launched the product. So prototype is important because you need to collect feedback from users or stakeholders about the functionality of the product before the public release. That's what I have been telling you since the start of the presentation. Then reveal areas for improvements and help identify faults and usability issues before the public release. Help reduce unnecessary costs, improve team efficiency and collaboration, of course, because when you have a prototype, you can actually figure out that how people are actually having a look at it, and whether the team is aligned with with the final product, whether there is any kind of different opinions that people might have, and based on that, then we can have people who can actually collaborate with us to make a better version of the final product. Then allow the users to interact with the working model of their products. That means the users will be able to interact with the working model of the product, help convert an abstract idea into a tangible product in a cost-effective way. So of course, if you have a prototype, you can actually understand. For example, so if I have a vague idea and I have no idea how exactly it's going to be in practical terms, so in that case, you will have to use a prototype. Identify if your product idea is a weak one and cost you heavily before actually move forward with it. Whether your product idea is a weak one and whether it will cost you a lot. How to create prototypes? You can create prototypes by creating rough 3D models of concepts, like use chart, use like 3D models, like use any elements, items, and just mock of what the final product is going to look like. Use digital tools to build a mock-up. Of course, you can use, there are a lot of softwares to help you create a prototype. One of the examples is Figma. Then role play user experience. That means sometimes you will have to role play and see whether the person who is using it, can actually use it. Maybe you can ask some people to volunteer to use your product and see what they experience when using that kind of product. Then you can create diagrams that maps out key process and service. You can use Miro to actually figure out, okay, this process services is possible. Then, of course, you have to create stories like in newspapers, articles, job descriptions that relate key features or concept. Create fake advertisements that highlight key features tweaked to different audiences. That means um, just create advertisements and see how audience actually respond to that kind of ad. Then we go to the prototype process. Now prototype has a process, like you can't just create prototype, you have to keep the users in mind. Make a plan of how you're going to test it, take action and fail fast. Choose the right tools and fidelity, then record questioning for testing. Now, there is a different type of prototypes. One is low fidelity prototype and high fidelity prototype. So, low fidelity prototype is wireframe storyboards. Wireframes are used to represent the basic structure of a website, web page, or app. Storyboard is help the user visualize help the person visualize the user's experience in using your product and how users are going to interact with your product. Then you can use diagrams to visualize different aspects of a product, which can then help you optimize your prototype. And then animation. Then comes animation, as in you are going to create a concept video or maybe a graphics idea of that product, and the team will get to see it. Interactive UI mockup, same thing, but it's a fleshed out version of the wireframe. That means it will have color scheme, typographics, and other visual elements that you have chosen for the final product. Then physical model is you can use different materials to create a model that represents the final look, shape, and feel of the product. That is, you can use materials like cupboards, rubber, clay, etc. So now, what are the pros of low fidelity prototype, high fidelity prototype, and low fidelity prototype? High fidelity. Now, before that, we have to understand what are the pros of low fidelity prototyping. That is quick and inexpensive, possible to make instant changes and test new iterations, disposable or throwaway, enables the designer to gain an overall view of the product using minimal time and effort as opposed to focusing on the finer detail over the course of slow incremental changes. Available to all, regardless of ability and experience, we are able to produce rudimentary versions of product in order to test users and canvass the opinions of a stakeholder. Encourages and foster design thinking. One of the cons of the low fidelity prototyping, that is, an inherent lack of realism. Due to the basic and sometimes sketchy nature of low-fi prototype, the applicability of results generated by tests involving simple early versions of a product may lack validity. Depending on your product, the production of low-fi prototype may not be appropriate for your intended users. For instance, if you're developing a product bound by a number of contextual constraints and dispositional constraints, that is, physical characteristics of a user base, such as users with disabilities, then basic versions that do not reflect the nature, appearance, or feel of the finished product may be of scant use, revealing very little of the eventual user experience. Such prototypes often remove control from the user, as they generally have to interact in basic ways or simply inform an evaluator, demonstrator, write a blow-by-blow account of how they would use the finished product. Then we are going to look at the pros and cons of high fidelity prototype. High fidelity prototype is quite engaging. The stakeholders can instantly see their visions realized and will be able to judge how well it meets their expectations, wants, and needs. User testing involving high-fi prototypes will allow the evaluators to gather information with a high level of validity and applicability. The closer the prototype is to the finished product, the more confidence the design team will have in how people will respond to, interact with, and perceive the design. The cons of the high fidelity test is they generally take much longer to produce than low-fi prototype. When testing prototype, test users are more inclined to focus and comment on superficial characteristics as opposed to the content. After devoting hours and hours of time producing an accurate model of how a product will appear and behave, designers are often loath to make changes. Software prototypes may give test users a false impression of how good the finished article may be. Making changes to prototype can take a long time, thus delaying the entire project in the process. However, lo-fi prototypes can usually be changed within hours, if not minutes, for example, when sketching or paper prototyping methods are utilized. So these are some of the readings recommended for today's class, and I hope you will be using these resources for your best understanding of how to create and iterate prototype. Thank you so much for watching. Let's move on to the next chapter. Thank you.